Why do some call Michael Brecker the Jimi Hendrix of jazz? And how did he revolutionize saxophone playing while remaining largely unknown to the public? Brecker changed the way people played the saxophone, just like Hendrix changed guitar playing. He used incredible skill and mixed different styles of music in new ways. He developed a unique style that pushed the boundaries of saxophone playing, incorporating elements like sheets of sound and circular breathing. Brecker's distinctive tone and phrasing were as instantly recognizable in jazz circles as Hendrix's guitar sound was in rock. Brecker and Hendrix were both extremely skilled at playing their instruments. They also came up with new and creative ways to make music that no one had tried before. This inspired many other musicians, not just in jazz or rock, but in all types of music. So, why didn't Brecker achieve the same level of fame as Hendrix? Despite his immense influence, Brecker's focus on studio work, his late start as a bandleader, and jazz's declining mainstream popularity kept him out of the public eye. His introverted nature and dedication to his music over publicity also contributed to his relative obscurity outside jazz circles. Yet for those in the know, Brecker's impact on jazz was as seismic as Hendrix's on rock. How did this musical genius balance a prolific studio career with groundbreaking jazz innovations while remaining largely in the shadows? It is true that, for much of his career, Michael was a studio musician. There are those out there that feel that you are less of a jazz musician if you spend time as a studio musician recording for large commercial rock albums. Brecker's extensive work as a studio musician for popular artists like Paul Simon, Aerosmith, and Bruce Springsteen was a double-edged sword. While it showcased his versatility, it led some jazz purists to view him as less of a true jazz artist, unfairly diminishing his jazz credibility. Others felt his playing lacked the jazz heritage and language they expected. What made Michael Brecker one of the most influential saxophonists of the last half-century, despite being relatively unknown to the general public? And why did it take nearly 2 decades for this saxophone titan to step into the spotlight as a bandleader? How can Michael Brecker be the jazz saxophone hero among other horn players, but get so little respect from the mainstream media? In Bill Milkowski's book, Ode to a Tenor Titan, David Sanborn says, "He had so much more technical ability than any other saxophone player I've ever known or even heard about in my life." In the preface to Milkowski's book, trumpeter and sibling Randy Brecker points out that his brother Michael spent the better part of his life in basements. There he studied, and studied some more. Brecker spent much of his early career as a studio musician, contributing to over 900 albums across various genres. He performed on albums released by Frank Zappa, Tina Turner, Billy Joel, Carly Simon, Robert Palmer, Quincy Jones, Chaka Khan, Billy Cobham, and many others. While this made him well known in the music industry, it kept him behind the scenes rather than in the spotlight. His work in jazz fusion, particularly with the Brecker brothers, was popular among musicians but less accessible to mainstream audiences. Some critics argue that Brecker never produced a groundbreaking masterpiece record that could have catapulted him to wider fame. While his albums were critically acclaimed within jazz circles, they didn't achieve the crossover success that might have brought him more public attention. Born in Philadelphia in 1949, Michael Brecker grew up in a household steeped in jazz. His father, a lawyer and jazz pianist, exposed young Michael and his brother Randy to the sounds of jazz legends like Dave Brubeck, Miles Davis, and Duke Ellington. Initially starting on clarinet and alto saxophone, Brecker switched to tenor sax in high school, inspired by the revolutionary style of John Coltrane. After studying at the University of Indiana, Brecker made the pivotal move to New York City in 1969 at the age of 20. Almost immediately, he immersed himself in the city's vibrant music scene, co-founding the pioneering jazz rock group Dreams in 1970. This early venture, though short-lived, played a crucial role in launching the careers of several important musicians, including fusion drummer Billy Cobham and guitarist John Abercrombie. In 1973, Michael joined his brother Randy in Horace Silver's quintet, leading to the formation of the Brecker Brothers Band in 1975. This group became one of the most innovative jazz-funk fusion bands of the decade. The Brecker Brothers' music was characterized by complex unison horn lines played over heavy rock beats and bold synthesizers. Their 1975 self-titled debut album featured the now classic tune Some Skunk Funk, which became one of their best-known compositions. In 1977, the brothers further cemented their place in the New York jazz scene by founding 7th Avenue South, their own jazz club in downtown Manhattan. Despite his rising success, Michael Brecker was fighting a personal battle that few people knew about. Throughout the 1970s, Brecker struggled with heroin addiction. Like many musicians of his era, he had been drawn to the drug partly because of its association with some of his musical idols. In 1981, Brecker made the life-changing decision to get clean. He entered rehab and, remarkably, never relapsed after completing treatment. This period marked a turning point in both his personal life and his career. What's truly inspiring about Brecker's recovery is how he used his experience to help others. He became deeply committed to supporting fellow musicians who were battling addiction. Brecker regularly attended meetings and put significant effort into helping others find the same relief he had found. Many musicians credit Brecker with saving their lives as he became a beacon of hope and support in the New York music scene. Surprisingly, despite his extensive work as a sideman with various groups, Brecker didn't release his first album as a solo leader until 1987, at the age of 38. This self-titled debut, Michael Brecker, featured an all-star lineup including Pat Metheny, Kenny Kirkland, Charlie Haden, and Jack DeJohnette. The album was an immediate success, voted Jazz Album of the Year in both Downbeat and Jazz magazines. The album spent 10 weeks at the top of Billboard's jazz chart. Don't Try This at Home, released by Brecker the following year, won a Grammy. From this point on, Brecker's solo career soared. Fans, meanwhile, waited more than 5 years before a new solo album appeared in record stores. Tales from the Hudson, released in 1996, was worth waiting for. Here again, Brecker drew on some of the greatest musicians in the world, including McCoy Tyner, Pat Metheny, and Dave Holland. The album won 2 Grammys. He released a string of critically acclaimed albums throughout the 1990s and 2000s, each showcasing his innovative approach to jazz and his unparalleled saxophone technique. His work earned him numerous accolades, including an impressive 15 Grammy Awards during that period. In the late 1990s, Brecker stepped back from the mainstream jazz scene, working extensively with Paul Simon and recording in a more fusion-oriented vein for the GRP label. He ended up spending the better part of 2 years on the road with Simon, which gave him a unique chance to see the world, traveling on private jets and hanging out with people like Nelson Mandela. When he recorded his 1999 album, Time Is of the Essence, he hardly knew the unintentional irony residing in the title. As subsequent events would sadly make clear, Brecker was already in the late stages of his career. In 2004, while performing at the Mount Fuji Jazz Festival, Brecker experienced severe back pain. This led to a devastating diagnosis of MDS, a rare blood disorder that can lead to leukemia. Despite an extensive worldwide search for a matching bone marrow donor, a suitable match couldn't be found. Brecker underwent an experimental partial matching stem cell transplant in late 2005. Although he appeared to be recovering initially, the treatment ultimately proved unsuccessful. Michael Brecker passed away on January 13, 2007, at the age of 57. He was a tenor titan, but somehow never seemed cool enough to get respect from the mainstream media. His most significant coverage in Time magazine came with one paragraph devoted to his obituary. He was never mentioned in Newsweek or The New Yorker his entire lifetime. Online searches indicate that Brecker's death got more coverage than any of his albums. Michael Brecker's life was a testament to the power of music, perseverance, and compassion. Despite these factors limiting his public recognition, Michael Brecker remains highly respected within the jazz community and continues to influence saxophonists and jazz musicians worldwide. This is Brian from One Track Jazz. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy jazz history and jazz biographies, then you'll enjoy the next 2 videos that are on the screen.